In my last two videos, I have taken you guys along on my journey through 200 days of hardcore Minecraft, and the support on those videos was incredible, and I had hundreds of people asking me to make a 300 days part. But today I went above and beyond and survived for an entire year in hardcore Minecraft. So if you guys do enjoy today's video at any time, please remember to subscribe. It is completely free, and yet again, almost 80% of the people that watch these videos aren't subscribed, which means if even 1 in 10 of the people watching this video right now subscribe, I could hit my goal of 50,000 subscribers by the end of March. Now all of that is over, I hope you guys enjoy my 1-year adventure through hardcore Minecraft. I started off my third part of this series with a new goal, and that was to make a new, really cool, modern farm themed house. However, to do that, I wanted a nice mountaintop area to build on, so day 201 to 203 was spent clearing out the local mountain and setting out foundations for the new mansion. However, on day 204, I ran into a slight problem with my build. I didn't have enough quartz to be able to finish it, which started a 2-day mission into the nether to grab as much nether quartz as possible. And on day 206, I returned home with 43 levels of XP and a bunch of quartz to crack on with the rest of my build. Day 207 was a day of making floors, so I had to dig out the dirt and start replacing. And the next day I ran out of wood, so I had to go chopping. And then on day 209, I started the second floor of the house. I had no idea how long this house was going to take, but the vision I had in my mind since the start of its creation made it all worth it in the end. And then the next few days were just spent building. I made a balcony, finished the roof, and by day 217 I was getting set up ready to move all of my stuff over to my brand new house. I had no idea how long this was going to take, but by the end of day 217 I had most of my stuff moved over and my house was looking great. I was in love already. And on day 219, even though the house had been built, the surrounding areas were still very plain, so I decided it was time to make a pumpkin farm that channels the path to the front door of the house. I had no real purpose at the current time of making this pumpkin farm, but it looked super cool and I wanted to add it. And after that was finished, unfortunately for the first time in 223 days, I made my first error point of not recording. So I really am sorry about that, but on day 221 I set off on a task to get a villager back to my house so that I can finally get mending books through trades for my armor, as mentioned by a lot of you guys in the comments of the last video. But it took me 3 days and I finally transported a villager over to my new house from one of the remaining villages that I hadn't massacred due to a failed raid previously. So it took me a while and I kept refreshing his trades, and finally after a long time I got a mending book as an offer. So I ran inside my house to capitalize on this offer and grab my emeralds, only to come outside and see that the mending book was no longer for sale, so I had to start the whole process all over again. But it didn't take long for me to get a mending book as an option again, so I made sure I didn't waste time. I grabbed my emeralds as fast as possible, went out and got as many mending books as I possibly could. With the current emeralds I had, I was only able to get 2 books, so I took my 2 weakest pieces of armor, which were my helmet and boots, and applied the enchant. But I then realized how good these villagers really are, and they had a really good purpose, so I continued my efforts to get more over towards my house. And it took a while. Like I said, there's no nearby villages, so I had to bring these guys from far away. But this guy offered me emeralds for my string, so I decided to trade all of my string that I had so that I could get my remaining armor pieces mending too, so I would never have to make more armor. So on day 227, I went over to my old house and finally applied the enchants to my final remaining pieces of armor. And to make the most of mending, I spent the next 2 days to try and go mining to get some XP from coal and ores so I could get my armor back to full durability. After my mining trip, my armor was at full durability, but I saw that I was able to trade the same villager that gave me mending paper for emeralds, and I had a sugarcane farm, so it was time to farm that, make a bunch of paper, and go and get a bunch of emeralds for free. I then started to realize how easy it really was to get things in this game when you have villagers to trade with. So I decided it was time to make a mob farm, something that I could have around my base area constantly gathering me mob drops whilst I'm doing other things, but it took me a while to build this thing. But in the end, it was all worth it because the final result was creating so many mobs in the nearby area. But unfortunately, whilst I was making the mob grinder, since I had to work through a few nights, on day 238 I had to go mining again due to a slight issue that happened at my base. My villagers were attacked by zombies whilst I was making the mob farm, which required me to get some gold so that I can make golden apples and convert them back into normal villagers. So I spent 3 days in the mines and then returned to save my villagers from eternal pain. And then I went off to steal more people from their villages and bring them back to my own house. I did this cycle a few times, I lost many villagers along the way, but in the end I was able to get a few villagers over to my house and set them up in their own boxes. But then stupidly I killed one of them again. So then I only had 2 villagers. However, thanks to Google, I was able to find out how to breed the villagers and then set them off on their baby making adventure. And I wasn't being creepy, I was just curious. I waited all through day 245 and they did nothing. So on day 246 I decided it was time to go and find a pet. So I grabbed my bones and I set off on my journey to find a spruce biome to get some dogs. Along the way I found a jungle, so I grabbed some resources from there. But after a while of searching for a spruce biome, I finally found one and then found some dogs inside of it. So I tamed them, made them mine, and then started to head home. My journey home took a long time. I got distracted a lot and only had a few fireworks remaining, so wanted to preserve them for when I needed them. However, whilst grabbing some wood, a group of pillagers appeared in a swamp. So I killed them with the hopes of getting Bad Omen and hopefully for the 4th time starting a raid and not leaving in defeat. But then unexpectedly on my way home after flying over a village, I accidentally started a raid that I was not at all prepared for. So I fought my way deep into the night of day 253. But due to the lack of preparation for this raid, the Ravengers completely overpowered me. I had nothing to do. So I decided to leave, admit defeat, lose the village, and return later for my dogs. This was now the 4th unsuccessful raid on local villages, and I was getting a little bit fed up, so I was ready to take on another one at the soonest possibility. But before I started my hunt for a new group of pillagers, I decided I had a bit more maintenance work to do around the house, which included creating a bedroom for me to sleep in and another effort to breed my villagers. However, the breeding of the villagers started using up all of my carrots and potatoes, so I needed to make a new farm that could grow more so that I could breed them faster. On day 261, I collected some of my mob spawner loot, and then ventured into the nether again to try and get some more ancient debris to upgrade my sword to netherite for when I start a raid. It didn't take me too long, and eventually I had my 4 ancient debris needed to upgrade my sword. So I cooked it up, went to my old house and upgraded my sword. And then the next few days were just spent doing some simple tasks and preparing to hunt down pillagers to take on the raid. However, somehow, when chopping down trees in the attempt to get golden apples for the raid, a group of pillagers actually appeared in my orchard and started attacking me, which would save me lots of time in trying to find some more later on. So I killed them, got the bad omen I needed, and then started my full-on attempt to take on the next raid. So I killed some chickens for feathers, and farmed some gravel for flint so that I had plenty of arrows for the upcoming raid. And then something even more unexpected happened. As I left my house to find a new village, a raid started at my house. This was the best and worst thing that could have happened, since it saves me a lot of time, but I didn't want a raid at my house. But nevertheless, I took on every single pillager, and as usual, I was charged up by a few rhinos. I took on the hardest people in the pack and had to take on about 8 waves of pillagers. But in the end, I was able to gather 5 brand new totems of Undying, and finally, after 270 days, I was finally able to successfully say that I had been victorious after a raid. So I displayed my trophies of the pillager banners, and then was able to watch the beautiful sun of Minecraft fall behind the mountain in the desert. After defeating the raid, I realized I had the Hero of the Village effect, which allows me to trade with villagers at a discounted price. So I tried to get my villagers to breed as much as possible during this time so I could try to capitalize on this cool reward. Whilst I waited for them to breed, I went back inside of my house and started to make a new enchanting area so that I didn't have to go back to my old house every time I wanted to enchant. But I had no spare obsidian lying around, so I had to find a lava pool to grab some, and in the process of that I found a new pillager outpost, which will be good for me in the future, so whenever I want I can do a raid. But I grabbed some obsidian, made some enchantment tables, and had my enchantment area complete. Later in that day, I also decided to make some iron golems. These things are very helpful in defending my surroundings and protecting my villagers from being attacked again by zombies. And then finally, on day 273, after many days of waiting, my villagers finally had a baby. So I kept this process going, and by day 277, I had a bunch of villagers in my farm. So it was time to start spreading them out, to give them all jobs to allow me to trade with all of them for different kinds of items. So this took a lot longer than I expected, but by day 279 I had all of the villagers in their own areas ready to be given jobs. I then spent the next few days searching and collecting clay. I wanted to make some potions for an upcoming adventure, but I also wanted a brewery building to brew them in, which had a cool cobble/brick style. So after I gathered up some clay, I let it cook up, and in the meantime I moved my old beacon towards my new area so that I could get best use out of it instead of it just sitting there doing nothing. After that was down, I grabbed my bricks and started on my build for the brewery. I wasn't going for an advanced build, I just wanted a very simple, separate building that allowed me to use specifically for brewing. And after a day of brewing, I wanted to make a new sugarcane farm on top of the mountain near my base to save me time, constantly going back to where my old house was to farm sugarcane. So that's exactly what I did. And after that was done, on day 288, I realized that I hadn't visited my mob farm in a long time. And over that time, it had gathered so much loot, I was so happy. I then used all of my mob loot to trade with villagers to get a bunch of emeralds, and then started on the extension to my farm. This will allow me to trade more food with villagers to get more emeralds, and as you can tell, at this point, I really like emeralds. But on day 292, I had finally finished my extension of the farm. It wasn't completely done, but I'd run out of seeds and carrots and potatoes to plant, so I couldn't extend it any bigger, so I just left it as it was and started my next mission. When I wanted to make a brewery, that was because I wanted water breathing potions. These would help me in my new goal of trying to get a trident, which I had no idea the difficulty of getting. This was like wither skeleton skulls, but 10 times harder. Along the way, I found a few buried treasures, so decided to loot those because why not, I had time to kill. I spent hours in the oceans trying to get a trident, but by day 316 I had watched a whole 3-hour movie whilst trying to get a trident and was still unsuccessful. So I resorted to a YouTube video that explained how to make a drowned farm. This required a lot of resources, but eventually I had what I needed and started the build, which since was underwater, took a while. I had no real evidence that this was going to work, but it was way better than swimming around for hours looking for drowns during the night. So I took my risk and I carried on building through this thing, and it took so long. I kept making mistakes. However, in the end, finally I got everything down that I needed to, and I had my first drowned in the trap. So I then followed the final step of the tutorial, and that was to build a platform around 100 blocks above the trap and just wait for the drowns to spawn. I did say I wasn't going to AFK, but this thing was taking way too long, and I really wanted a trident before this, and I was super worried that I wasn't going to end up getting it within the 365-day window. But somehow, after my luck being super bad the whole time I had explored the ocean in order to get a trident, I had 2 drowns with tridents in my trap, and miraculously, they both dropped a trident. I was absolutely blown away. My luck had finally changed, and I was able to fly home proud with 2 tridents looking like the king of the ocean. Upon my return home, straight away I used 2 of my spare mending books on my 2 new tridents to allow me to repair their broken durability. And then I wanted to give my new toys a try, and what better way to do that than take on a raid. So I returned to the pillager tower I had found a few days prior to this and got myself Bad Omen. I then flew straight into a village and started my 7th raid of this world. And thanks to you guys, I remembered to block off some of the villagers to make the raid much easier. And then I battled my heart out with this new trident. And in all honesty, this was probably the most confident I have felt through all of my raids up to now. And before I knew it, the raid was over, and I had once again become victorious. The villagers celebrated with fireworks, and I joined them. When I got home, I realized I now have 9 spare totems of undying, which is insane. I then went to my villagers and made a few trades for more emeralds. I did some more farming to be able to do even more trades. And that's when I saw I was able to get apples from one of the villagers. So I grabbed a full stack of apples and made as many golden apples as I possibly could. But unfortunately, I only had enough gold for 20 golden apples at the time. So again, I ventured into the Nether for a long journey to steal as much gold from the walls of hell. And after a very long journey, I had over 4 stacks of gold, so I decided to call it quits, return home, and made 41 more golden apples. I then realised I had a huge excess of levels, so I decided to enchant a bunch of books. Luckily on one of those books I was able to get loyalty. This is an enchant that I was able to apply to my trident to allow it to fly back to my hand like Thor's hammer after throwing it. I then spent my remaining XP on level 1 enchantment books to hopefully someday be able to combine all of them together to make my armor and tools the best they can possibly be. The next day I made a very simple task, and that was to make an automatic chicken farm so that I could constantly have free food being made for me for whenever I wanted. And once my chicken farm was done, I decided I want to turn my old mob loot grinder into an XP grinder so that I could continue to enchant books to try and get some really good tools and armor. So I placed some water down to prevent the mobs from dying when they fell down, and then I went and stood at the top of my grinder, waited for mobs to spawn so that I could go down and kill them. And in the meantime, I wasted a lot of time trying to hit a cow very, very far away with my trident. But then when I went down, I had way too many mobs for myself to handle. This quickly adapted XP farm was not efficient at all. So I spent the next few days adapting the farm into a working and somewhat efficient XP grinder. And whilst I was making this masterpiece, a few mobs already started to fall. My new XP grinder was starting to work perfectly. And after I stood on my platform at the top again for a little bit of time and tried to hit the cow again, I went down after a while and there was so many mobs. So I kept doing this cycle for a couple of days and I had a bunch of XP, so I decided to go home and continue to enchant level 1 books. And by the end of this process, I had almost a full double chest of level 1 books. And in the process of killing the mobs, I also got a brand new music disc called Ward. This was a song that I had not yet heard, and a disc I had not yet gathered. So I was happy to add it to the collection, and happy to have it as my background theme as I adventured back into the Nether to make a Nether hub. I had this Nether Portal now for well over 300 days, and I wanted it to be a little bit cooler when you go through, to allow me to know which way I want to go and where I need to go when I go through it. So I gathered a bunch of polished blackstone, and actually almost died after I leaped off of the bastion thinking that I had my elytra on. But thankfully I was able to live and then carry on my build. I wanted a pretty flat area so that when I came out I wasn't constantly going up hills and mountains in the Nether. I made a very clear path down to my ancient debris mine, as well as over to the Nether Fortress, and to the red biome and the Bastion Remnant. The next day I returned to the Nether because I hadn't yet ridden a Strider, and I really wanted to do this. I didn't really know how to do it, so I just yeeted myself into the lava with a saddle, and somehow I was able to click onto this thing. But after a quick Google search, I realised I needed a warped fungus on a fishing rod, so I had to go back home, make a fishing rod, find myself some warped fungus, and then I dived back down onto the Strider. And I don't know why, but I got way too much enjoyment from riding this thing. I don't know why, it just looks so funny, the way it bobbles, it just really made me laugh. So I somehow managed to take him all the way home, walked him right back to my house, which took a while, but eventually he got there. I thought he was going to die maybe because he wasn't in the Nether, but no, he lived nicely and now he is chilling in my house. And then I spent the next couple of days grinding out my farm so I can get more emeralds from my villagers. And after repeating the cycle over and over again, draining my villagers from every single bit of their emeralds, it was finally day 365. I had finally done this world for 1 whole year. Like I said in the last part of this series, I did not even expect to get up to 100 days. Never mind an entire year. This whole journey has been absolutely incredible. The support on this series has been outrageous, and I thank you all so much for watching and enjoying this series. Genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. If you are still at this part of the video, be sure to subscribe. It's completely free. And hopefully I'm going to have a lot more content like this coming out in the near future. Also, a huge reminder quickly just to say, go check out my second channel. I think I'm going to be continuing this series over on there, but as a live stream series. So if you want to go and check that out, feel free to do so. Link is in the description as usual, as well as all my other socials. And that's it from me. I hope you guys enjoyed my 1 year journey through this hardcore Minecraft world. And I'll see you guys all in the next video. Peace.